Imagine risking your life by jumping into the freezing ocean, just for a chance at freedom.
For decades, people trapped behind the Iron Curtain did the unthinkable to escape the Soviet Union. And some of their stories are straight out of an action movie. In 1979, two young friends in Soviet Estonia had enough. They built a homemade inflatable raft, waited until nightfall, and paddled into the icy Baltic Sea, heading toward Sweden. They were miles from land, freezing and exhausted, but they kept going. After hours in open water, they were spotted by a Swedish cargo ship and rescued. They became some of the lucky few who escaped to the west. In 1986, a desperate Soviet pilot used his own helicopter to escape. He loaded his family in, told air traffic control he was on a training mission, and flew straight to Turkey. By the time the Soviet military realized what happened, he was already requesting asylum. In 1951, a 22-year-old man escaped East Germany by holding onto the bottom of a moving train. He was just inches away from death. One wrong move, and he'd be crushed by the tracks. But after hours of terror, he made it past the border and jumped off, free. When the Berlin Wall went up, people started digging. One group of students spent months digging a secret tunnel. It was risky. Guards had orders to shoot escapees. But in the dead of night, 57 people crawled through and reached freedom. The tunnel was destroyed soon after, but the escape became legendary. In 1974, a Soviet oceanographer named Stanislav Kurylov did the impossible. He was on a Soviet cruise ship in the Pacific. There was no way off. It was surrounded by KGB agents. But one night, when no one was looking, he jumped overboard, in the middle of the ocean. No lifeboat. No supplies. Just him and the waves. For 3 days, he swam over 100 kilometers through deadly currents and sharks, heading toward the Philippines. He made it. Kurylov became one of the most legendary Soviet defectors in history. In 1979, 19-year-old Ukrainian Lyudmila Korbut took one of the boldest risks ever. She was an elite swimmer, but in the USSR, she wasn't allowed to travel. So while on vacation in Cuba, she did something unthinkable. She snuck away at night and swam toward a passing cargo ship heading to Australia. Exhausted and freezing, she was eventually rescued, and when she told the crew her story, they helped her defect to Australia. She later spoke out about Soviet oppression, becoming a symbol of freedom. In 1983, a group of young Georgians, mostly artists and musicians, came up with a desperate plan. They wanted to escape the Soviet Union, but there was only one way out. They decided to hijack a plane and force it to land in Turkey. With fake weapons and smuggled guns, they tried to take control of a flight from Tbilisi to Leningrad. But the Soviet military responded fast. They stormed the plane, killing several hijackers and passengers. The survivors were arrested, and most were executed by firing squad. Their story remains one of the most tragic and desperate escape attempts in Soviet history. The Soviet government hated escapees. They hunted them down, imprisoned their families, and even assassinated defectors abroad. But people still risked everything to escape the brutal regime. Some made it. Some didn't. But their stories prove that no wall, no government, and no army could stop the human spirit. Would you have taken the risk?